Greetings, my fellow film blows and thinkers. This is L3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mangoes of South Florida. And today's date is Monday, June 18th, 2018. Yeah, I'm chilling by the New River. Beautiful. Yeah, it's mellowed right now. And Fort Lauderdale, nice little breeze, and I like it. And people are out here walking around with their dogs and all that good stuff. I'm around the bridge by the courthouse. The parking lot and all that. So I'm just like doing a little trial and error, see where I could try to avoid the train system, to be very exact. So I'll be doing a couple of topics, which is very interesting. And I was going through some of the stuff on my email and all that. And plus, it's interesting that their activist post, they did an interesting article about kill robots, autonomous machines to be fighting as soldiers in 2028. Yeah, can we say Terminator 101, right? And of course, there's other things that are happening with more of the James Comey investigation. And a friend of mine told me about the LCA, Labor Committee actions, so a lot of stuff, just a few things are happening here and there. Nothing really serious at the moment, but I could disagree. A lot of stuff is occurring, so I'm going to keep this one pretty short. Let's do a couple titles here. And this one's pertaining to whistleblowers in Broward County Courthouse. And actually, it came out today by the Florida Bulldog.org. And this one here, grand jury witness fired by Broward Health sues claiming whistleblower retaliation. This is by Dan Christensen. And as it reads, a former Broward executive secretary has filed a whistleblower suit against the hospital district, alleging she was fired after testifying before the grand jury that indicted her boss, President Chief Executive Officer Beverly Capasso. Pam Hatfield was among a string of current and former officials at the taxpayer-supported district who testified before the grand jury last September. 3 months later, Capasso, then Broward Health Commission Chairman Rocky Rodriguez, Commissioner Christopher Urey, ex-Commissioner Linda Robinson, and General Counsel Lynn Barrett were indicted for conspiring to violate Florida's public meeting laws, also known as the Government in the Sunshine Law. Usually something like that is called transparency and disclosure and all that. So technically, if you look at Article 1, Section 24 of the Florida Constitution, subsection A to be exact, it addresses that particular topic. And anyone can look at these records. It has to be disclosed. You can go online. And Sunshine Law is very good. It's supposed to be based on transparency. But there are claims, allegedly, these individuals, these suspects, aren't following protocol. So, we'll continue on here. Capasso, Rodriguez, Urey, and Robinson were also charged with 2 counts of violating public meeting laws. Barrett was also charged alone with 1 count of solicitation to violate the Sunshine Law. The 5 awaited trial. Meanwhile, Governor Rick Scott's newest appointee to Broward Health Board of Commissioners, Ray Berry, turns out to have an undisclosed connection to the governor. Am I surprised? No. Woo-hoo. Flip-flop Rick Scott. All right. From June 2011 through June 2014, Commissioner Berry's Cooper City Company, Health Business Solutions, employed the Fort Lauderdale-based lobbying firm for Scott's longtime pal and confidant William Rubin to lobby the executive branch in Tallahassee. Florida lobbyist compensation records show Health Business Solutions paid the Rubin Group between $120,000 to $240,000 during those 4 years. Can we say conflict of interest? Of course. Oh, but remember, we're too damn stupid to figure that one out, right? We're just a bunch of peasants go, yes, master. Hey, it's gray here, boss. Health and field peasants, to be exact. Scott appointed Berry to the board on May 11th, despite Berry's strong financial support for Democrats, including Scott's opponent, former Governor Charlie Crist, probably one of Rick Scott's glamour twin brothers. You know how that goes. State records show that less than a month before the election day, Health Business Solutions contributed to $25,000 to Charlie Crisp for governor. Berry also personally gave $500 to the Florida Democratic Party during Rick Scott's first campaign in October 2010. And that is the Jungle Queen right behind me. Berry and his company gave $1,000 to Alex Zink, Scott's opponent in the same election cycle. His company gave Scott $250. How sweet. And in 2012, Berry gave $1,000 to re-elect Senator Bill Nelson, who Scott hopes to unseat this November. Yes, Bill Nelson. I support pro-big government and be proud to be anti-freedom. I am a tyrannical senator as well. Ain't that nice? Governor Scott and Broward Health. Scott has a long and targeted relationship with Broward Health, in addition to having the exclusive power to appoint its board members. Excuse me here. He was an investor in a private equity firm that owned 21st Century Oncology, the Fort Myers-based company, given a 25-year no-bid contract by the commission in 2012 to supply radiation oncology services to the district's patients. Despite last December's indictment, Scott chose not to suspend any of the indicted Broward Health officials. 2 months before, however, he suspended Madison County Clerk of Courts after he was charged with petty theft. Oh, double standards, I see. Capasso was serving an interim CEO when the indictment came down, but instead of a suspension, Broward Health's board voted 4-1 on January 31st to give her the $750,000 a year job full time. Capasso also stands to collect incentive bonuses that could bring her total take-home pay to $1,125,000. Capasso's deal, however, didn't sit well with Governor Scott. On May 20th, he sent a letter to Broward Health Board questioning the appropriateness of her significant increase in base pay bonuses. It's my expectation that any bonus be performance-based, and in this case, the measure should include reduction in dependence of district on taxpayer dollars, quality care, and patient satisfaction, hospital profitability, and patient access to care. Scott wrote, as a board member of a hospital district that receives more than $140 million in taxpayer dollars, I urge you to take action to ensure the appropriateness of total compensation and accountability through performance measures. At May 30th regular board meeting, commissioners discussed plans to address the governor's concerns at a special meeting following the 2017 meeting, June 27th meeting. You can view the May meeting at the Dan Lewis report here, so there's a link for that, so check it out yourselves. Whistleblower complaint. Hatfield's whistleblower complaint was filed in April. Her complaint against North Broward Hospital District, Broward Health's legal name, says that she was wrongfully dismissed on March 16th. She was the longest tenure of 5 senior executive secretaries of the district. The lawsuit says Hatfield was sought out as a witness by Assistant State Attorney Tim Donnelly, Chief of his Office, Public Corruption and Special Investigations Unit. Donnelly subpoenaed Hatfield to give a sworn statement in December 2016 and later to appear before the Broward County Grand Jury in September 2017. The lawsuit says Florida Bulldog and later Sun Sentinel reported in late September that Hatfield had testified before the grand jury. At one point, Capasso commented to Hatfield about her having testified. The lawsuit says she said to Pam something along the lines of, "Well, we will all find out what you said sooner or later," said Hatfield's Fort Lauderdale attorney, William Amlaw. 5 weeks after the December 12, 2017 indictment, Hatfield was told that she was being transferred away from Capasso to work for Sandra Todd Atkinson, chief executive of the district's Fort Lauderdale Hospital, Broward Health Medical Center, at the same title and pay, the complaint says. On March 16th, she was told that her new position was being eliminated. According to the complaint, Broward Health retaliated against Hatfield because of her testimony. Hatfield is seeking a permanent reinstatement, money damages, lost wages and attorney's fees and costs. Broward Health has not yet filed a response. The case is assigned to Judge John Bowman. Okay, interesting. Judge John Bowman, interesting. I know who he is. Interesting indeed. It's like, yeah, so if you're a whistleblower and see corruption, you can be retaliated. But so, you know how that goes. You got a bunch of folks out there who think they're smarter than everybody else and don't care about sunshine law, allegedly. And if she has merit, hopefully she does, she'll get every penny from those bastards. All right? And I say that allegedly speaking. From the defendants and all that. It's the principle. And this is why when it comes to these meeting minutes and all that, it has to be displayed. Anyone can look at it. Period. Even the Broward County's government center, if I'm correct. So it's one of those areas you have to, nothing new at all. So hopefully, this case should have merit. I'm going to have to find out when's this lawsuit, because I'm going to have to check it out when I have a chance. And I'm familiar with Judge Bowman. I remember he did presided for the Occupy Fort Lauderdale case. And it was, I got to say, it was a junction. He got denied. But however, I can tell you this, the people that testified for the city of Fort Lauderdale, they were lying to their teeth, man. We were all laughing at them. Pathetic that they are. Yeah, we got to see how far this thing goes, and it shouldn't be, be straightforward. That's the name of the game. And sometimes you got a bunch of clowns that just smarter than everybody else, and I've seen it all before. No, we'll just go wait and see on this case, and I thank Mr. Christensen to put this out, because hey, man, Dan Christensen could put this out. You know what? It has to be addressed for sure. All right. Well, next one here, I'll be doing one more. I'm going to make it as real brief today, and I know that for sure. Yeah, I'll be pretty brief. And this one here is the Mises Institute? Yeah, Mises. No, FEFFF. Yeah, FFF.org, the Freedom Foundation. So there's a good, very good website. Check it out. This is here. Identity Politics: Victory would mean the end of liberty. This is by Richard M. Embeling. It came out today as well. America started an experiment in human history that being ideas of individual freedom and limited government. All of history before this assumed that the individual was subservient to the tribe, and governments had nearly absolute power over people in form of ruling kings and princes. Today, there are counter-revolutions against this great experiment in human liberty in China, it takes the form of an asserted alternative to Western constitutional democracies that claim the superiority of an authoritarian model on a Marxian foundation, under which political power is concentrated in the hands of one party and one leader. To assure unity and overarching plans for Chinese national greatness reclaimed, it utilizes a vast surveillance state that watches, controls, arrests, and imprisons or kills any and all who offer criticism, dissent, and resistance to Beijing's Big Brother state. And we got over here. We got Homeland Security, right? In the Middle East, thousands of Muslim fanatics gravitated to the banner to the Islamic State. Of the Islamic State, yeah, New World Order 101, with this totalitarian insistence of one true faith, one true theological doctrine, one true path to salvation. Like too far many other religious callings of the past around the world, the Islamic State called upon redeemed and the righteous us to fire and sword to establish that one true faith over all of humanity. Brutality and mass murders were the keys to the kingdom used by those of the Islamic State who arrogantly asserted knowing how to get a heaven on earth. If you mean ISIS, absolutely. New World Order agenda. I've addressed that on my past episodes. In the West, and especially most viably on America's university and college campuses, and among a seemingly growing number of academics and intellectuals, is the claim that the founding American principles were all a ruse, a smokescreen for the perpetuation of racism and gender oppression, along with social class exploitation. I'm oppressed. How dare you? I blame everyone but me for my own actions. This is what the mindset has. Very sensitive people that believe the world should revolve around them. We should all give them a special K button and go, yes, you are the chosen one, and we all are peasants below you. The danger of identity politics, past and present. Identity politics is the latest revolutionary collectivist banner which the enemies of philosophical, political, and economic individualism are marching to create their own variation of a bright, beautiful new world. But you can be certain that if triumphant, their victory would herald an end to that American experiment in human liberty. All precious freedoms articulated in the Declaration of Independence and codified in the U.S. Constitution will be threatened with extinction. Assault on freedom of speech and the press is already entrenched on many campuses around the country. The thought-controlled thugs shout down, intimidate, and threaten or use of physical violence against any and all who attempted to talk about ideas, policies, or views inconsistent with or contrary to these latest totalitarians of the mind. I give you a bunch of examples out there. What you all have in common, those thugs, you have fascist attitudes. Either one who are against fascism, you got fascist attitudes. Prove me wrong if you dare. The only legitimate speech or publicly published words are those that reflect the lexicon and ideological content of the leaders and the enthusiastically chanting mobs of frenzied students who demand to end all views and values other than their own. Yes, we're glamour people. The world should revolve around us. Even though I have soft dish-pan hands, I'm a proud Palmolivist. You see my article, Campus Collectivism and the Counter-Revolution Against Liberty. Have we not seen all this before, leading up to and then following to the rise to power to Adolf Hitler in Germany? If there were large gangs of Nazi thugs who break into and brutally break up all means and speeches of opposing groups, the young Nazi fanatics terrorized and attacked those designated as race enemies. Were these not the proponents of a version of identity politics? Were you a member of the oppressed and humiliated pure German race demanding liberation and rebirth? Or you were the one of exploiting and the blood-sucking minority of degenerate and racially impure Jews? What about the Red Guards in the China of the 1960s and 70s? Revolutionary cadres made up of thousands of Chinese students running wild while holding and waving their hands a little red book and the quotation from Chairman Mao, and mindlessly repeated the fascist phases and saying of Mao Zedong's take on Marxism and communist power through the barrel of a gun. The humiliation, the brutality, and even murder of parents, teachers, professionals, anyone else, even poor ignorant peasants, unfortunate enough to classify as an enemy of the people, in the irrational hysteria of Marxist class conflict overlaid with Chinese characteristics. What this is not a form of identity politics into which social class you were born and lived, oppressed workers or oppressing capitalists? That's the question. The demands of America's identity politics proponents that statues to be pulled down, symbols of the past be removed, and buildings and streets be renamed all other family resemblance as well. From the time of the Russian Revolution in 1917, the communists, wherever they came to power, initiate their campaign of eradicating all traces of the evil and bad past by blowing up churches and destroying architecture and images reflecting the dark era of capitalist exploitation that Marxism was relegating to the dustbin of history. The Nazi leaders and mobs did their version of this 1930s Germany. The bonfires of books meant to reduce to ashes and memory of or knowledge of ideas and authors not part of the identity politics of German National Socialism, an aspect of this Nazi plan for a new and better master race was extended to the burning of the bodies of the millions of the racially inferior who were killed so no trace would be left of them either. Was this not identity politics in extreme, just as the murder of tens of millions of class enemies in the Soviet Union, with millions more of such class identity enemies sent to work, starved, and died in the slave labor camps of Siberia or Soviet Central Asia? Individual human beings were reduced to and classified by the collectivist identity politics of race or social class, a group of identity classifications that sealed your fate, separate from who or what they were as a distinct individual person. Making the past the identity politics of the present. The Marxists and Nazis reduced human history to preconceived narratives of either class conflicts of race warfare through the ages who did not fit the ideological narrative was either ignored or twisted to conform to the identity politics storyline meant to explain all of human existence down to the present. The same is now being done by the practitioners of America's new identity politics. Everything that has happened on this planet is forced through the prisms of race or gender identity. The ignorance, error, or outright lying reaches a level of near total disbelief. It is sometimes claimed, for instance, that if not for white racism, slavery would never have existed. In fact, slavery has been one of the most universal human institutions since the beginning of recorded history. Ancient Greeks enslaved other Greeks. The ancient Romans, as they conquered and expanded their vast empire, enslaved peoples from all ethnic, linguistic, and religious backgrounds. The same was true among Asians, Africans, and the Americas, among the Aztecs, Mayans, and the Incas of Peru. African tribes enslaved each other as a result of their tribal war. The black African chieftains would sell conquered slaves to Arab slave traders who would bring their human cargo to the coast of Africa, where those slaves were to be sold at auction and transported to the new world of the Americas. At the same time, white Europeans were common among the slave populations of the Muslim world until not that long ago. Every word slave is derived from Slav, meaning the variety of people in Eastern Europe who were conquered and held in bondage by other Europeans. In the beginning of the 1500s, slavery was given a new era of employment with the discovery of the Americas and the transportation of increasingly large number of Africans by the Portuguese, the Spanish, then the English. The accounts of the slave ships across the Atlantic are horrific in their brutal and inhumanity of treatment, and with the growth of a partly slave-based economy, especially when it became the southern states of the new United States. It was not too far surprising that white slave owners developed race-based rationales for their peculiar institution, often deriving from its biblical interpretations. In addition, in the first half of the 19th century, Southern authors such as George Fitzhugh argued in his book Sociology of the South, or The Failure of Free Society, 1854, and Cannibals All, Slaves Without Master, 1857, that slavery was a benevolent socialism under which slave masters far more tenderly cared for their human property than the capitalist factory slave masters of the North, who paid barely subsistence wages to their free workers and cared nothing if they starved and died. many others talk about that too. There's actually documentation on that as well. So yeah, do your homework, and it's very interesting. And I can say this about the whole slave thing because I was listening to a show, finally listened to this entirety about Marshall Del Rosa, and I know he was being harassed by a couple of folks who are Southern Poverty Law Center sympathizers, which I started to hear about that, and they're saying he's a white nationalist and all that, and all these Yahoo newspapers, even Miami New Times, which I'm very disappointed. I know it's called Mr. Anelli a glam boy, but I'm very disappointed because I'm just wondering if these individuals, the way they wrote it, they never actually take the initiative on to meet him face to face or go to one of his classes. And I can say this: I had an honor. I met him in person. I chat with him. I met him 3 times, and I see him spoke 3 times as well. First time was at the Bill of Rights Day, December 15th, 2007, at the Palm Beach Convention Center, and I bought one of his books about lessons of American democracy, and it was a lesson from the Confederate Constitution. And he was a very articulate man. He had a lot of his merits, and a lot of folks, still believe they're all evil, fascists, and all that. But you have to actually start doing your homework. And this man has a lot of information to back up his views. And they all say he's a white nationalist and all that. Come on, talk to individuals like him. I defend him. I defend his right to do these particular classes. And like I said, the interview was very good. I did a talk about him yesterday in my last show. But folks, actually check him out. That's why he brought this up as well during the interview. So St. Patrick, I think the name was, from Midnight Riders News. He did a good job. I really was very pleased with this interview, which is episode 66 on MidnightRidersNews.com. All right, the idea of liberty and the end to slavery, but it was also among Europeans and especially among the British in the second half of the 18th century that are emerged an active, organized, and finally successful anti-slavery movement that brought about the end of the slave trade across the Atlantic, and then the abolition of the institution of slavery throughout the British Empire by an act of Parliament in 1833. These individual Englishmen, who by accident to their birth happened to be white, argued that slavery was an abomination against God as revealed in the Christian faith. All men are born equal, children of God, and which mortal man, no different from all others in the eyes of God, should presume to the Lord of those others as if they were God. There's only one master of all human beings. He rules in heaven. And I'm glad, this came out, because even during the time of Thomas Jefferson was president, the Congress passed, and it was signed by him on the ending of importation of slavery. So everything was happening by steps, not overnight. So people tell me, slave owners, this and that. You got to look at the patterns and the times. Everything's got to be in due time. That's what movements are about. There's such thing as a magic lamp theory. They spoke eloquently and movingly against cruelty and barbarity of the treat of captured Africans by the slave traders and the slave masters. The given indignities and ignorance the masters imposed on their human property. Was it any wonder the anti-slave advocates said that the Africans seemed to some to be so less human and civilized compared to whites, when the slave owners prohibit all forms of literacy and learning for their property and treated their slaves more like abused animals than their fellow human beings. The humanity of humanists of Africans was no different to that of Europeans. They insisted if they were set free to live normal human lives. The anti-slavery settlement had a parallel growth in the United States. Abolitionist groups among northern whites slowly grew in numbers in favor During the decades before the Civil War, with public outcries against their Southern white fellow countrymen, Northern whites demanding to the end of immoral institution undertook rallies, meetings, publications, and public campaigns. Though there were pro-slavery advocates in the North too, and the abolitionists, white and black, risked physical assault and murder, especially vocal and determined in their opposition. Hopefully you folks are really paying attention. Yes, there were Northern whites, there were pro-slavery advocates in the North. Okay, it wasn't just the Confederacy or the Southern states. Because I remember that, if I'm correct, the state of Kansas has fought for the North, and they own slaves. Something to think about. Look into it if you can. That'd be great. And I'll continue on here. Others risk arrest and imprisonment in working with the Underground Railway, moving railway slaves to Canada, where they could not be extradited back to their Southern owners. This is not down to display or marginalize the efforts and actions of free blacks in the North, or the courage and character of those runaway slaves who risked being sent back to the South by publicly telling their personal stories to arouse the conscience of more Northern whites against the institution from which they escaped, or the often pervasive degrees of racial discrimination that blacks in the North faced, even in those states that had long before abolished slavery. But it's an environment of political correctness in which whites, as a collective category, stand condemned and accused of responsibility for racism and slavery. Historical accuracy require that it may be remembered that the movement that finally brought the global end to the legal institution of slavery began in Europe and spread to America, that many individuals who were white took public stands and fought sometimes with their lives for the fire triumphant to end slavery on both sides of the Atlantic. So you gotta let you folks know one thing: is folks from all different walks of life, regardless of skin color, fought to end involuntary servitude. This is why the so-called war between the states and all that was totally unnecessary and inexcusable. It could have been done, because the fact is, even interesting too, a lot of people don't know, only a small percentage were of southern states own slaves. The rest of them couldn't afford it. So it's one of the, you have to look at things in a greater hindsight, greater foresight on this. So that's why I'm always learning on this conflict, because we have to study the past, because it's today's greatest teacher. So I'm just gonna keep going here. Individual rights as a key to free people from bondage. What did they do so? Why did these multitudes of people speak out against his ancient institution and to risk and experience a condemnation and threatened assault by their fellow human beings who defended slavery? In the word, liberty. The 17th and 18th centuries had seen emergence of an articulate political philosophy of individual freedom and constitutionally restrained government. John Locke's two treatises on government, 1690, expressed his new social idea that the individual possessed certain inherited and inseparable human rights to his life, his liberty, and honestly acquired property. The individual owned himself and was neither the property of a tribal group nor an absolute king. Locke insisted that his man's life and liberty were given to him as a gift from God, but he also argued that our human reason is able to reflect upon nature as human beings and our condition in the world. Our reason can demonstrate the initiative and self-evidence that each of us both needs, desires, freedom to survive and prosper. That this includes the peaceful appropriation of physical property by the use and application of our mental and physical labor to transform the natural objects in the world into useful things to sustain and improve our lives. However, sometimes other human beings do not respect an individual's right to his life, liberty, and property, and he may not be able on his own to fend off the attack. Some people form associate relationships or mutual defense and securing of justice, which goes under the name of government. But this government is meant to be a guardian of our individual liberty, not its abuser and violator. And is limited to and restrained in its power by written or unwritten constitutional democrations that define the permitted actions by those who hold political office. See my article, John Locke and American Individualism. One such idea was set loose on the world and came to be understood, believed in, and defended by a growing number of people. It demonstrated to be a force of its own that demanded logical and consistent application. However long the resulting process might take. Yes, the early Americans tolerated or even continued to support the enslavement of one portion of the nation's population. But just as two objects cannot successfully occupy the same physical space to do so, not two logically incompatible ideas cannot permanently occupy the same social space. How could political leaders and the most of the citizenry declare that theirs was a land of liberty, of peaceful and voluntary association and exchange of opportunity for all to live their own lives peacefully as they chose and following their own personal purposes, where some human beings held others in permanent bondage? A lie cannot be perpetually lived, no matter how hard a person may try. Either there is liberty or there is slavery and tyranny. The idea expressed in the Declaration of Independence and codified in the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, have forced people living in this country over the years and decades to more greatly live the words to say that their country is supposed to be all about. In this case, when it came to ending slavery and extending equal rights and protection under the law to all people residing within the boundaries of the United States. See in my article, Classical Liberalism and the Problem of Race in America, and Free Markets, Not Government, Improve Race Relations. Interesting there too, huh? Something to look at. Alright, so let's continue on here. The new identity politics would mean the end of liberty. Neither the Declaration of Independence nor the Constitution speaks of rights in terms of racial, gender, or social class identity. They recognize only individuals with their individual rights before the law and protected by an impartial rule of law, above which are no individuals or special groups. That people and politics often do always reflect the idea, and ideas espoused should not come too much of a surprise. But the purpose and the role of those ideas and ideals is to serve as the benchmark of comparison from which to judge and evaluate the reality of men's words and deeds. That individual human beings fell short does not detract from or suggest the hypocrisy or deceitful smokescreen of these ideas and ideals. It merely means that the flesh is weak and we are called upon to more fully practice what we preach. But the new advocates of identity politics will erase from public discourse, discussion, or understanding the noble and historical monumental ideas of individual liberty and rights and constitutional limited government by the linguistic sleight of hand, excluding them from the academic and public arena by labeling them with a combinatory hurtful words of racism or racist or sexist or homophobic. What would a triumphant world of the new identity politics look like? Would you no longer be an individual allowed to life your own life as you peacefully find most likely to bring you happiness and personal meaning? Would you be classified and categorized from birth as belonging to racial, ethnic, linguistic, of social group or class? Your life opportunities, therefore, would be defined and dictated by how the political process determine what station and status your identity group should hold and be allowed to benefit from. Your words and language would be permanently policed, judged, and potentially condemned for any social thoughts defined by whether they were hurtful to some other politically identified race, gender, ethnic, and linguistic group in your society. Where you would be a subject to re-education to clean your mind and its thoughts of hurtful ideas that demonstrate your hidden and incentive racist and sexist outlook. Indeed, linguistic gender insensitivity on your part might even result in imprisonment. As a recent piece of the legislation in Canada, such could happen to the unlucky person who commits a gender word crime. Oh my goodness. You're a male, a female. That's sensitive. Arrest them. Throw that person in jail for saying male and female, boy and girl. Oh my God. Who can you associate with, for what purposes and what terms? That would be subject to approval and the command of a government designed to impose society of identity politics, rather than the current Bill of Rights that recognizes freedom of speech, the press, religion, association, property, and protection against self-incrimination. In the world of identity politics, it would be necessary, like under communist regimes, to have public sessions of self-criticism so to free the individuals from their word and deed crimes. But how could this be accomplished if a person cannot be intimidated and forced to confess his thought crimes? That is, to incriminate himself before others. Here why it is, in my view, that the identity politics orchestrators and their mindless mobs of youthful followers so vehemently find it necessary to condemn and reject the philosophical foundations and constitutional basis of the American experiment in freedom. How else do you undermine the institutions that stand in your totalitarian way than to assert that they are to be condemned as racist and sexist rationale or for an unjust society? That's an interesting question there, of course, and therefore not open to discourse or discussion. Having been exiled from the debate over America's political future, the victory of identity politics in America will be death of the idea and ideal of human liberty, with its respect for and a value to the individual human being, who is not meant to be a slave in the hands of another version of the collectivist dream of tribalism and human sacrifice on the altar of one more utopian nightmare. These are articles, you can look at these articles here. Tyrants of the Mind and New Collectivism. And collectivism progress from Marxism to race, gender, intersectionality. Absolutely. This is why, for all these years, I go, greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. Even though I was supporting the Ron Paul revolutionary movement, revolution, of course, it was never to say, I'm a Ron Paulite. No, I'm a freedom loving, sovereign thinking individual that supports natural born rights. A lot of things have occurred, and they want to use these little Mickey Mouse clubs to prove that, no, you guys speak this way. I've been in some of these meetings, and they say, the Constitution was only good for the original voting for the white person. I'm hearing all this malarkey, one-dimensional, tunnel vision propaganda, and this time like to laugh, puke, or dial 911. This is why when I talk about I talk about on my past episode about individual rights. And the whole thing is this. Things happen. Gotta happen in a period of time, not overnight. And every person out there, regardless of what they look like or where they come from, your rights are natural born. Take the initiative on stepping up and liberating yourself against all forms of tyranny. Other words, exercise demoniac resistance. As long as you don't violate others, you stand on principles. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. He really infuriated the crown, but he got a great amount of people inspired. He was against slavery himself. He was a white man from England, or Britain, to be exact. However, the truth of the matter is this. Principles, natural law, enumerated rights, or natural rights. Everyone should start thinking for themselves. You don't need these little Mickey Mouse clubs to tell you any different. And this is why I see at some of these rallies, I just laugh at them because they don't have a damn clue what they're doing. And many of them are nothing more than pretentious fashion models, posers. I try to give them a conversation, they're like in the twilight zone. That's why person like myself, when I go to these places, I'm not here to take over the show, but spread the love of my knowledge and wisdom to everyone else. And I have inspired folks too. And everyone else can do the same thing. And that is it, my friends. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or even say something that's interesting and may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with the court. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network. Just to let you know, it looks like they are good till July, but keep on sending those donations because they are good folks, and they have and it's really small, but you know what? They're Big Brother free. You hit minds.com, futurenet.club, patreon.com/lookalike 3 eyes. Yes, I relaunched it. You hit me on Gab, gab.ai, yours.org, oneway.org, or buddylist.co. In addition, you can email me at lookalike3@gmail.com, or to encrypted ones, especially the folks that have a Proton Mail account, Look numbers 03@protonmail.com. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance helped you feel the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.